Fleming, 53 years old, and retired Army Special Forces officer. Spent 30 years on active duty in the infantry starting out, and then retiring in Special Forces. 26 of those 30 years spent in Special Forces. Originally from Englewood, New Jersey. My parents were both from the South. My mother was from South Carolina, a place called Greer, South Carolina. My father was born in Plant City, Florida. And growing up most of his time, or most of his life, in Asheville, North Carolina, before they both became married and moved up to New York. Moved up to New York in the late 50s, early 60s. I was born in 1969. Shortly thereafter, moved over to Englewood, New Jersey, where I spent most of my time growing up. Went to North Carolina A&T, Greensboro, North Carolina. My mother was a heavy influence on me in that regard. Both of my parents, HBCU graduates, my father going to Johnson C. Smith, and then my mother going to North Carolina A&T, and her brother also going to graduate from North Carolina A&T. They heavily influenced that decision when it came time to choose college. Prior to that, I really was more of considered myself an action hero growing up. Really never gave much thought to going on to college other than those influences. I always had a strong desire to serve, wanting to be either in law enforcement or the military. My first inclination growing up or right prior to graduating high school was to be a New Jersey State Trooper. I was an only child growing up, so I always had a strong sense of belonging or wanting to be part of something bigger than myself or being on a team in that sense. So a lot of team sports really formulated my desire to serve or be part of that something bigger than myself. Every team sport that I was on, played football, baseball, you know, the wanting to join the military was kind of that bigger team in that regard, or law enforcement. But coming out in high school, wanting to be a New Jersey State Trooper, said, hey, coming out of high school at the time, I think the salary was about $26,000 a year, at 18 years old, not bad. You get increased bonuses every year after that, and said it's something I can enjoy doing, called to adventure. But then my parents weighed in and said, no, you're going to go to school. You're going to go to college. So applied to 3 different schools, was accepted by all 3, but really because of the kind of lineage of A&T that it had for my family, and then also at the time had one of the larger ROTC programs for an HBCU. Figured that's something that I'd want to pursue and be a part of there. So attended A&T, enrolled in ROTC right away, and I felt at home there, particularly in the ROTC department. I threw myself into that, majored in political science so I could have a better understanding of the world and global affairs. But really I felt more comfortable within that ROTC environment and what that provided. My freshman year as a MS1, Military Science 1 student, there was a visit by an organization called the ROCS, ROCS Incorporated, which is a mentoring organization for military officers, minority military officers. And on that panel, where they would come down to different HBCUs or colleges and talk about life as an officer in the military and provide some tidbits, you know, lessons learned from junior, mid-grade, and senior level officers to cadets. On that panel was a Brigadier General at the time, Clara Adams Ender, who was the 3rd African-American female general ever to be promoted to that level. And then also a Colonel Earl Atkinson, William Earl Atkinson, who was an African-American major at the time, but had served previously in the Ranger Regiment, Special Forces, and also in Delta Force. These two individuals on that panel became the initial and lifelong influences in my journey in the military. Particularly Colonel retired now, Earl Atkinson, who always wanting to know I wanted to be in the military or on that larger team or be a Green Beret, knew that, or I said that's what I wanted to do at an early age. And I saw Earl Atkinson on that panel, saw someone who looked like me, someone who had blouse jump boots, Green Beret, Ranger Regimental combat scroll. And that was the first time I saw an image like that. And I said, that's exactly what I want to be in the military. And fast forward several years, that's what I ended up doing. Having had that image early on was something very, very impactful for me. But regardless of that, I knew that's something I wanted to do. I wanted to be a paratrooper. Upon commissioning in the infantry, I went on to the 82nd Airborne Division because I wanted to jump out of planes. That sense of adventure, that sense of, again, belonging, being on that larger team, and then eventually going on to Special Forces. And the rest is history, as they say. You know, growing up and just kind of having access to media as we knew it at the time, magazines, books, TV shows, things like that, you kind of see a lot of these images, and it formulates what you want to be later on in life. But you don't see a lot of folks that look like you, particularly in this field, but you know that's what you want to do. And I gravitated toward that regardless of anything else. When I got to that point, I said, oh, okay, well, there's one. You know, I know that there is a place for me. I know I have what it takes, in essence, but you kind of question a lot of times, why don't you see a lot that look like me or look like us? When I saw Earl Atkins, it was everything I had envisioned for myself. You know, just the body of work that is on a uniform, when you look at that and it says, you know, you've done the hard jobs, you've done the hard things, and this is someone clearly that shares my background, my upbringing, and after talking with him, you know, we did have a lot of similarities in our upbringings, but that told me that, yeah, I had everything I had that it would take to do these things, and he has. I'd love to follow in those footsteps. So I won't say I was an anomaly. The environment that I was in initially, I think it was unique. My first battalion commander in the Army was Major General retired Abraham J. Turner. Oh, wow. Okay. South Carolina State graduate, phenomenal leader. That was my first exposure in the military, in the infantry, as a young lieutenant. And it was a battalion commander of color, and then no other lieutenants at my same peer level, but mid-level officers in that environment. But we sometimes, and I at the time, took for granted that this was the norm, when it wasn't. It was a very unique circumstance, and a lot of that was owed to Lieutenant Colonel Turner at the time, looking to give opportunities for qualified young officers of color to show their mettle. And that's the opportunity I was given, and it was a great start.
Good point. You know.
So that was one of those, you know, running in the background always was the, in any given profession, you know, what's that pinnacle that you want to achieve? For me, it wasn't, you know, yeah, being a paratrooper, being in the infantry, great start, but what's that pinnacle within the Army? To me, it was a Green Beret. And I said, I wanted long ago, if I'm going to be in the Army, I want to be a Green Beret, whatever it took to get there. So after my initial time in the infantry, it was that, what's that next thing? And of course, as an officer, and there's a time period that you have before you essentially you time out. It has to be that senior lieutenant, early stages of being a captain before you can apply and be accepted. So that clock was ticking, and I was right on time for submitting an application. So I knew the time had to be now at that point, 4.5 years in the infantry, to apply and then go to selection and then go on to the qualification course. But really it was just, what is that pinnacle, and how do I get there, and what do I need to do to reach that point? The appeal to me was an organization that thought differently, that looked at solving complex problems through common sense. But then also everything that you bring to the table culturally and pulling on other teammates to solve those complex problems. And that was something that you found and that was uniquely part of Special Forces. Loved my time in the infantry. I would strongly recommend it for anyone entering into military service because to me that's the catalyst for fighting and winning our nation's wars. But it's a conventional organization. There's a set playbook many times. It has evolved over the years, the infantry and other branches, but really as the world's problems get more and more complex, then the Special Forces are always going to be on the cutting edge of trying to find unique solutions to those problems. And that was the appeal for me then and even now.
Ooh.
Enjoy the ride.
Ooh.
I would agree with Sergeant First Class Melvin Morris earlier that education is the key. But take all that education, all those things that you've learned, apply those, but enjoy the ride. You've got to and provide value every day. Providing value every day, which is something as I reflect back, I think about, hey, as we maneuver in different spaces and we take on jobs or enter in professions, it's provide value. Every day, whether it's in word or deed, provide value. And that makes things a lot easier. It's personally rewarding, but then those that you're working for or with or under can see that you provide that value. I think that's it's really culturally intuitive, I think. And it's, if it's not us, then who? And that's really far-reaching because it's and you can and mentorship can be provided by anyone. But when you do see someone that looks like you or comes from or that has that shared background, you're not really giving them a hand up, but you're saying, hey, this is the path least traveled. If you happen to be the one that traveled it, then I think it's incumbent upon you as the individual to pass that on and say, don't fall into the same pitfalls that I did coming along. I think we owe it to largely everyone to avoid those things, to pass that on and say, hey, here are the challenges that I faced. You shouldn't have to face them unnecessarily. There are always going to be inherent challenges in everything we do, but if they can be avoided unnecessarily, then I think we need to pass that along. And when you have such a small population, we need to establish a sense of succeeding as we all go forward. Yeah, like I said, going back to and having thought about it over the years, being an only child and always wanting to be on that team, I look to a lot of people to my left and right. I'm very quick to call someone a friend or brother. That's how being endearing or endearing myself to others or others endearing themselves to me in whatever aspect. But when you do that, you build a bond. That bond I found is very much alive and well in the Special Forces community. I've learned from some great NCOs and officers along the way, guys like, you know, close by and present, Sergeant Major Steph Johns, you know, Master Sergeant Darren Barber, my early team sergeants, Vic Oates, Gus Benton, huge mentor, and impressed a lot upon me about just being a professional and what it means to be a leader, take responsibility for actions, and there are a whole host of others, you know, so whoever hears this within the sound of my voice, forgive me if I don't mention your name, but you know, there are a whole host of folks that have left you know, positive impressions in my life, Mike Alexander being one, but you reach out and you look, particularly in this closed and close community, and you find folks that have had those shared experiences, those challenges, and all for the same cause, for that same aim. You know, ultimately, it's to free the oppressed, de oppress soli beer, but also, you know, our contribution to the nation, and that I think is a powerful statement. And you can only find that in this close community. But that's something I've greatly appreciated, you know, all my years.